which I am going to share with you right this moment. So, 2 centuries of Romani gypsy music in Russia. Well, the word zingaresca means in the gypsy style in Italian. So from time to time, in classical music, you'll find a piece that's called zingaresca, which means play like a gypsy. What does it mean? Why do we use the words Romani and gypsy at the same time? Well, I mean, when Vadim and I present similar programs or educational projects in various colleges, usually we start here. What do you know about the Romani people? So we can be interactive. What do you know about that? Say it again. Say it again.
I'm sorry.
I think it wasn't the answer to my question. So here in Iowa City, at the University of Iowa, I actually teach a course on Romani cultures. And the very first class gets an assignment to conduct a survey, to go to a street corner in the pre-quarantine times and ask people these simple questions. Where did the Romani people come from? Why are they called Gypsies? How many Romani people are there in the United States? And have you ever listened to Romani or Gypsy music? So guys, there is a lot of you right now. So can somebody answer the first question? Where did the Romani people come from?
India.
India.
Okay, so you guys are atypically erudite.
Yeah.
Because normal Iowans apparently don't know. They say, if the question is posed like that, Romani people, they will say either from Romania or from Rome.
It's part of our audition, actually, Oleg, right?
Nice to know. Nice to know. Why are they called Gypsies?
Because they used to think that you came from Egypt.
That's right. It's because of the word Egypt. And this is not really a nice word. We're trying to stop using it altogether. But the moment we only use the word Roma or Romani and don't use Gypsy at all as an adjective, for example, people usually don't know what we are talking about. So as a marketing label, we are condemned to be stuck with this word Gypsy for a while. And what we are trying to do, Vadim and I, is to say the word Gypsy when it's music, when it's not about humans. Like, let's play Gypsy music, or you're going to hear Gypsy music, Gypsy romances. But if you are talking about Romani people, we do our very best not to use this word. How many Romani people are there in the United States?
500,000.
How much? How many, sorry?
500,000.
I don't know, a lot.
Pretty close. Good.
Well, the official statistics are between 1 and 3 million. And then the question is, why is the margin of error so huge? Between 1 and 3 million.
Because not everybody wants to admit it.
Not only not everybody, but really nobody wants to. And why nobody wants to admit it?
Negative connotations.
Negative connotations and years of persecution in Europe, in Eastern Europe, in Western Europe, everywhere in the world, you name it, including this country. So this is one of the most discriminated nations. And that's part of the course that I teach. And have you listened to Gypsy music?
Oh, yeah.
Well, so the Roma came from India, from sort of northwestern region of India. There are many different versions of this map. I mean, this map is a little bit sort of customer friendly for topographic idiots like myself, because at least it's written what country it is. So it's being speculated that once the Roma made it through the Middle East, by the way, Middle East was a real bottleneck. That's the place where the Roma lost a lot of their population. But once they got to Anatolia, basically present-day Turkey territory, that's where they formed a nation. That's when they became Roma. People are speculating about when they actually left India and why. And none of that is completely in stone. And this date of their exodus is being pushed back consistently. So the latest DNA discoveries suggested it was about 1500 years ago, much earlier than we thought, even like 20 years ago. How did Europeans figure out that the Romani people came from India? Where did this come from? How could they figure it out? What gave it away?
I'm going to guess two things. Musicology wise, tracing back a lot of the musical influences of early Roma music, and then DNA.
Right. So DNA
And
was
language.
DNA is basically
language.
20th century, late 20th century. So people figured out that the Roma were from India in late 18th century. How did they do it?
Well, I guess the language. Somebody else.
Exactly. That was the Romani language. And because they were dispersed all over the place for so long, for centuries, there isn't really such thing as Romani language. There are several different dialects. But the core, the grammatical foundation of the Romani language is closest to Sanskrit. And then they have loan words and layers of words. And some of those words are associated with things like, for example, one particular language, like Byzantium Greek, is responsible for all the words that have to do with metalwork. And that's why people suggest that it's in the Byzantium that the Roma became skillful metal workers. By the way, the Calderash, the Roma who are metal workers, they're the most numerous clan, the most numerous group within the United States, and they are mainly metal workers. And today they may deal with scrap metal, with some even old car salesmen, but I mean, they're really connected to the skill of their forefathers, which they picked up in Byzantium. Anyway, you can see from this map that the Roma ended up in Egypt, perhaps, but they didn't come from Egypt to Europe. Like they came first to Turkey, then the Balkans, then Western Europe, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth or Ukraine, and then eventually they made it to Russia. So basically, in Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, the Roma were. There are records already in the 16th century, but in Russian sources, in Russia, in Moscovia, you find it only sort of under Peter the Great's watch, so sort of early 18th century. The earliest source that mentioned, I mean, it's kind of terrible. That's what my students do, but I will do it anyway because it's a little bit like sort of American Army style when people are staring at the text and somebody is reading it. The earliest source that mentions the Romani musical performance in Russia can be found in the memoirs of a former serf, Leonti Travin. He describes the celebration of the 1774 peace treaty with Turkey, for which Catherine the Great government generously provided food, drink, and entertainment. Among other exotic performers, Gypsies showed their art of playing gutki, gudok, perhaps you guys should know, a Russian bowed folk instrument, and bagpipes, and danced with maidens and married women. Among them were old men with gray beards who also participated. So this is a very interesting piece of information, and kind of it's unique. We don't have much more information like that. What's interesting is that the official theory, once dropped by someone in some book, was that Catherine's favorite, Count Orlov, or Prince Orlov. Anyway, he served in Moldova, basically in present-day Moldova, and then once he returned and settled in Moscow, he liked the gypsy music so much that he imported a gypsy capella from Moldova, and that became his gypsy choir. This theory was completely dismantled for a simple reason that the gypsy capella in Romania, or present-day Moldova, would have been completely different in terms of its repertoire, in terms of its the names of the performer. So basically, there was at least a century or a couple of centuries of the romance between Romani people, musicians, and the Russian peasants. And so, like here, you see this information that just simply tells you that they were playing Russian folk music pretty much on gudki and bagpipes, and they danced basically Russian dances. So basically, they had time to adapt the Russian folk songs to their use, to their style of performance.
I'm listening now.
Okay, so the next step, the next step, few years later, is it a familiar source for you guys? Collection of Russian folk songs with their melodies, St. Petersburg, 1790. Do you know that? Irina, do you know?
Yeah.
Yes.
Lvov Prach.
Yeah,
Collection
Yes.
of Lvov Prach.
It's here.
Well, basically, we're getting to the turn of the century, to the great year of 1800, when several things were happening at the same time. One of those things was kind of raised interest in folklore and collecting songs. You know, this is not the only collection, but it's the first large collection with the actual music, where somebody tried to write down the melodies of Russian folk songs. And of course, it was far from perfect. It wouldn't fit the present day musicological standards, and they were just setting it for voice and piano and all that. But it was kind of revolutionary that there were those tunes. I mean, there were a lot of songbooks that were the texts only. And so Nikolai Lvov has a nice preface in which he distinguishes for a special group of songs called Gypsy songs. So again, I will read it for you. Among these dance songs, there are some remarkable mainly for the way they are sung rather than for their composition per se. They are called Gypsy songs because only to these tunes one can dance in the Gypsy way. These songs were also composed by Russians, but they changed their name to Gypsy songs because the Gypsies used them. The dance of these agile dancers is called in 3 feet, which means that stomping every beat with a foot, they articulate their singing according to that rhythm, which results in a kind of both dance and singing that is different from Russian. I don't know whether the Gypsies themselves composed these songs, or whether they managed to select some of ours and gave them such a lively attire in which they are quite different from Russian songs, but they became incomparably more suitable for a pantomime dance and more agreeable than the peasant songs for singing. Unlike the latter, they have more tunefulness and joy, and they have some short exclamations such as "Ay Luli" that are uttered while dancing, just like in Spanish fandango. So, I mean, this is a fascinating piece of text, I hope you agree with me, because it gives you a lot of information, and although a lot of it is confusing and almost impossible to interpret. For example, what is dancing in 3 feet? Anybody knows what it means? I don't. I mean, it's probably an indication of some kind of hemiola, some kind of rhythmic variety. But one thing you can figure out, that there was some rhythmic vitality in this dance that was not in the original, original Russian peasant songs. They brought some rhythmic vitality. And also how their exclamations, such as "Ay Luli," how it reminds them of Spanish fandango. So they actually knew something. Whoever wrote that, Nikolai Lvov, he knew something about the Spanish music, and he didn't know that the Spanish music, today known as flamenco, was also created by the Romani people. So that hypothesis that people could have traced Roma back to India because of the character of their music, of course, that is very shaky kind of ground, because nobody really can distill what is that special something that the Roma do to their to the music. So usually, I mean, and there are people who are studying the Roma, and they generally say in every conference they go after those who generalize and say Gypsies this, Gypsies that. They say don't do that. Every case is different. So guess what? I'm going to do that anyway. And so I'm going to say that in every country, the Roma basically adapt the local vocabulary, the local genres, the local musical instruments. It's 6-string guitar in Spain, it's violins and cymbalum in Romania, it's bagpipes and other wind instruments in the Balkans, and it's Russian guitar and mainly singing. You know, Russian culture, you're the perfect addressee of this kind of statement. Russian culture is predominantly vocal. Russian folk music is mainly about singing. So in Russia, they adopted the 7-string guitar that was basically invented in 1790s. It's a long story, it's a separate story. You know, if you're more interested in that, I can tell more about the history of the Russian guitar, but that's kind of a different topic. So just when the Roma, from that setting that we have here, basically the collective of peasant songs reports, and from the previous one from Taravin, which was some celebration of, you know, gypsies also playing the peasant instruments, basically circa 1800 they become an urban phenomenon, and they move to the cities and they become extremely fashionable. Everybody wants to hear the Roma. So for example, one of the first gypsy prima donnas was called Stepanida Ustesha Soldatova. She, you know, we know about her life very little. She was a trained classical singer. And somehow that happened. Some rich patron kind of helped her to get education. She died pretty young in 1822, and she was so popular that the obituary, included the complete repertoire list, what she sang, and this description of her singing. Stepanida composed her own ensemble of 2 men and 3 women, without whom she wouldn't appear on stage. 1 man played violin, the other played guitar, the women sang harmony. Everything came together in such a choir that one had to be impressed with its perfect coordination. It sounded like an organ. Most songs they sang were arranged in such a way that Stepanida either started or concluded the melody of every verse. These songs one could divide into peasant songs and songs arranged in an Italian manner. They also knew a few Ukrainian and even Polish songs. So now I will have a little detour and tell you how Vadim and I met, how our friendship began. Basically, I wrote my dissertation about Russian 7-string guitar at Duke University, and in 2001 I got a Fulbright grant to teach in Moscow. And while I was doing research on the guitar and so on, people were telling me that you should go to the Roma, you know, Romani musicians, they have old guitars, but somehow all of my training was about written sources, and I kind of, you know, hesitated to branch out. And just as I arrived, somebody told me that you know, there are 2 amazing guitarists, and you should go and listen to them. And it was a house concert, so you know, I kind of thought, what do I have to lose? And that was Vadim with his phenomenal uncle. And I was so taken by that, and it just meant so much for me that it just completely changed my life right then and there. I didn't even know to what degree it would, but basically, you know, like every entrepreneurial musician, I started thinking, what can I do with it? How can we involve, how can the ensemble that I was directing at the time, how can we collaborate with those guys? And I decided that what we will do is we'll try to recreate, I mean, our project will be called Early Music of the Russian Gypsies. And we will recreate the repertoire, because in this obituary there is the repertoire list, so we'll just recreate her songs. And so now I will stop sharing for a moment, and I will ask Vadim to play what we recorded at the end. Vadim, are you there?
Yes, hi. What we recorded.
Yeah,
sure. Well, that's probably our first recording together. with my uncle's trio and Oleg's trio at that time, which was crossover between kind of classical early music, what Oleg and his colleagues did, and we basically did our own, traditional and regional music. So this is one of something like early recordings that came out on Naxos label. Later on, the CD called Stasha, as you can see, I guess. Good.
Can hear but cannot see.
Oh, you cannot see. Okay. Just a second.
Well, there's no video anyway, so there's...
No video.
Just a second.
Okay, well, thank you.
This is the checkers game where grandson.
You can stop. So, I mean, basically, what you can hear in this presentation that it was a reconstruction. That my idea was that we will I mean, by now those songs are not particularly popular among the Roma, so we will teach them those melodies, the words, and they will bring the know-how of the Romani performance. But that's because we basically are limited to to the descriptions of those ensembles. You see, we also had like 3 guitarists and a violin and 2 women singers. So now Vadim is going to play for us
I will.
a real. What year is that?
I think it's 1924 or something.
No, it's 1912. It's one of
1912.
the, I mean, it's basically as early as the music recording can allow us. So
this is unique, actually, recording. I mean, it's like really interesting recording by I think Vadim Panina or somebody from that era. Just a second. Let me play it. Can you see it, guys? can you see it actually, the screen? Hello?
Yeah, we do see it.
Okay.
So this was this was a recording from the time when I'm sure that there was only one microphone for all the members of the choir.
Yeah.
But this is the genre of Romani music that was popular throughout the 19th century and splashed into the 20th century. That is Gypsy choir.
Well, the genre is Russian Romance, actually.
Well, yeah, the genre is Russian Romance, and the Gypsy choir could perform a romance, or they could perform a folk song. But
Yeah.
basically, when you say the Gypsy choir, you don't really imagine like tenors and basses here and soprano and altos there. Every choir performance was kind of a kind of a little theatrical play. Vadim, I would like to start sharing my stuff now.
What that?
Ага. Я еду сейчас.
Okay, Vadim, could you? Yeah.
I think, Paul, if you could mute everyone, and we can unmute ourselves if we need to. That will be good.
Okay, so now I start sharing again. So Stepanida is basically, basically a phantom. Basically, we cannot really hear her because, like, she died in 1822, and there were no sound recordings, so we can only trust those who actually heard her, and it describes how great she sang. Well, this is from circa 1840. You can see the Romani choir in action. Well, you see that women played guitars, that the choir leader always played guitar and kind of conducted with his guitar.
Guitar that you have basically.
Yeah, and you see the various members of society of the time, basically landlords, officers, sometimes not here, merchants. They all are lovers of Romani music, so they came and listened.
Oleg,
So
I'm muting you now, and you have to unmute. So go ahead. Yeah.
Did the things that I said before, were they actually heard? Was I already muted?
Yes, they were all heard.
I don't need to repeat. All right.
Just when
Okay,
you
good.
stopped, I did it.
Okay, good. So this is a wonderful book, Очарованный странник, Enchanted Wanderer, that became the foundation of a very famous play in Roman theater in today's Moscow called Grushenka. But basically it's about, this scene that I'm about to read is about, a simple guy, basically a peasant, one could say, that finds himself in a gypsy house, the house where the Roma perform for their guests. Well, the gypsies cleared their throats, her young brother touched the guitar, and she began to sing. Their singing is usually very sensitive and it goes right to your heart. And when I heard her voice, which had sounded so alluring to me that even behind the door, I could not help feeling deeply moved. It was lovely. She began perhaps a little harshly, a little too boldly, something like this. The sea is roaring, the sea is mourning, and you could really hear the sea moaning and feel it dashing the little skiff which was caught up in it. Now one way and now another. But when she appealed to the star, there was a sudden change in her voice. Sweetest, dearest star of morning, twinkling up so high, human sorrow cannot touch me while you sailest up the sky. And then a new surprising change, something unexpected. All their songs are full of those appeals. Now they weep, sunk in the deepest melancholy, throwing you into such a black dejection of spirits that your soul seems about to part from your body. And then suddenly they burst out in a quite different key, and your heart feels merry again. So in that song she began by dashing the skiff against the raging waves, and the other suddenly burst out on a high note altogether. And then there's the verse. So now we have a kind of a mixed mixed media, so to speak, a clip from a film from 1963, I believe, which is the screen adaptation of the Enchanted Wanderer,
Okay.
Wanderer,
Yeah,
and
if you don't
Vadim will
mind.
play it for us. And what's
Yeah.
interesting, that in all of those screen adaptations of the times, they really used excellent Romani artists, real Romani guitarists, real Romani singers. So you cannot really get back to the 19th century, but you can get to the place in the 20th century when people still remember.
Остались мы без слез и сожалений, но отчего на сердце тяжко вновь, и как-то странно в нем мне чудится мучение. Не то тоска, не то любовь. И как-то странно в нем мне чудится мучение. Не то тоска, не то
Okay, so basically you see that they're all men listeners, and they're fans of various Romani singers. And basically, if you remember Star Trek Next Generation, holodeck, this type of entertainment was holodeck for the Russian soul. A Russian guy who had some issues in the family, who was kind of disappointed in life and so on, he could come to he could come to a place like that, and his soul would be tormented and touched and moved, and he'll imagine a little boat or imagine the star. He'll be deeply in love with somebody, and that was absolutely essential. So the place, just about the last literary excursion that we're going to take, is from Lev Tolstoy, The Living Corpse, which is as late as 1910, and basically this romance in the Fateful Hour, в час роковой, was already used in this play, and actually on the record it said as performed in Tolstoy's play The Living Corpse. So again, I will read it for you. It's interesting that Tolstoy knew a little bit of Romani language. He actually cited the real songs on of the Romani repertoire at the time, and he shows us. I mean, I don't know if everybody read this. Sorry, I forgot to turn off my phone. But if everybody read this, but basically the main character is Fyodor Protasov, who is for some reason disappointed in life, and he instead abandons his life and kid and spends all of his life, all of his hours in that Romani house, and where the Romani are performing, and he is addicted to the song that's called Nevechernya. And so basically Tolstoy, very kind of precisely with this sort of psychological precision that he had, he shows how Fedya, the protagonist all the time wants to hear that song, and so the people who are there, they want to say, sing this, sing that, and he always wants to. And now, not the evening dawn. A room in the Gypsies' house. The choir is singing Kona Vela, or Who is Coming. Fedya, in his shirt sleeves, is lying prone on the sofa. Efremov sits astride a chair in front of the leader of the choir. An officer sits at a table on which the bottles of champagne and glasses. A musician is taking notes. Efremov: Fedya, are you asleep? Fedya, rising: Don't talk. Now let's have Not the Evening Dawn. The Gypsy leader: That won't do, Fyodor Vasilievich. Let Masha sing a solo now. So you can see that basically a Romani choir was an institution that had its own rules, and it wasn't the time for the Evening Dawn. This was the time for Masha to sing the solo. Fedya: all right. And then Not the Evening Dawn. Lies down again. Officer: Sing In the Faithful Hour. Gypsy: all agreed? Efremov: go on. Officer to musician: have you taken it down? Musician: quite impossible. It's different every time. And the scale is somehow different. Look here. Beckons to a gypsy woman who is looking on. Is this right? Hums. And we know that the woman says, great, it's exactly right. So basically, every time the Roma sing, they sing it differently. They improvise polyphony. We all know that. So, Vadim, would you play for us that fragment from that film?
Definitely. 1 second. Can you see the screen?
Yep.
Настасья Ивановна.
Милый ты мой!
Ну, теперь не вечерний.
And now, Not the Evening Dawn.
Прежде мою похоронную.
But first, my funeral song.
Понимаешь, умру, в гробу
When
буду
I
лежать.
die, will be in the coffin. Oh.
Sorry.
Good grammar and spelling
Okay,
are
it's
important, but if you
Don't translate that.
Yeah.
Ну, цыгане, жене
When I'm
завещать.
in the coffin, the Roma will come and sing Shall me verst. I walk 100 miles. I will jump out of the coffin to dance with them.
Хочу. Вот что запиши.
So, write this down.
Ну, катай.
So you see, he's going to sit astride the chair.
Медре Москва, тернарая вьё. Аера меня me pesquelillo. Зачем загубила молодца меня?
So you are great. You're a real gypsy.